Okay, so this is the role of women in ministry, part 2, talking about women prophesying. Again, this was written by my dad back in probably the late 70s, early 80s. It's actually written with a typewriter. So that'll give you an idea. This was before he even had a word processor, which then turned later into a computer, like much later. So we didn't have a computer until like the 2000s. So this would probably been the 70s or 80s that this was written. And it could have been something for school. I don't know. It doesn't actually say, but it's fine. All right. So this particular portion, in the first section, I actually read all of 1 Corinthians 11. It's kind of lengthy, so I'm not going to do that again. But 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 16 is the verses that we're going to be using to kind of go through and talk about women prophesying. There's also 8 women that we're going to discuss. 4 of them are pretty quick. They're sisters, so there's not actually a whole lot on them, but we're still going to kind of discuss them a little bit. But I will read 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 2 through 16, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So 2 through 16 says, I praise you for remembering me in everything and for holding to the traditions just as I passed them on to you. But I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of every woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head, but every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. She might as well have her hair cut off. But if it is a disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, then she should cover her head. A man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. Yes. Sorry, there was a lot of that in there. It is for this reason that a woman ought to have authority over her own head, because of the angels. Still not really sure what that means. I hope he gets into it. Nevertheless, in the Lord, woman is not independent from man, nor is man independent from woman. For as woman came from man, so also man is born of woman. So everything comes from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? For long hair is given her as a covering. If anyone wants to be contentious about this, we have no other practice, nor do the churches of God. Okay. So now, women prophesying. The first one that we're going to look into is Miriam, who is found in Exodus chapter 15, verses 20 and 21. And I have my handy dandy little pages that I wrote for this series. So we find about what we find out about Miriam is this was back in the days of Joseph. And in Exodus 15, 20 through 21, Aaron was actually the one who was being beaten by a Egyptian soldier. And then Moses, after he had, he already knew he was Jewish, but when he saw it, he actually killed that Egyptian, saving Aaron. Miriam is Aaron's sister. Anyway, sorry. Long story short, back in the days of Moses, that Miriam from the story of Joseph. Okay. Exodus 15, verses 20 and 21. Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her, with timbrels and dancing. Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. This was after the Red Sea parted, everybody crossed over, and then the Red Sea buried Pharaoh's army. So that's what this was. The next one is Deborah, Judges chapter 4, 4 through 8, and verse 14. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidith, was leading, which traditionally means judging, because God gave judges, was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Iboniam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, Go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishron River, and give him into your hands. But Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. If you don't go with me, I won't go. And then they kind of talk a little bit. Then in verse 14, it says, then Deborah said to Barak, go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. So must have been really well respected for a captain of the guard to basically say, I'm not going to go without you because I ain't going to win this if you're not with me. So something to think about. Now another one is Huldah. That's Hulda. Huldah. She is found in 2 Kings chapter 22, verses 11 through 15. And we find that it says, when the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his robes. He gave these orders to Hilkiah the priest and Ahikam son of Shaphan, Akbor son of Micaiah, Shaphan and the secretary, and Isaiah the king's attendant. Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for the people and for all Judah about what is written in this book that has been found. So this is when they found the books of the law that Moses had written. And then the king had realized that they were not following, and that's why God was not with the people. And they actually mourn and turn back to God. So that's what this story is about. Great is the Lord's anger that burns against us, because those who have gone before us have not obeyed the word of this book. They have not acted in accordance with all that is written there concerning us, the Jews, the Israelites. Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Akbor, Shaphan, and Isaiah, that's Asaiah, not I-A, so Asaiah, not Isaiah, went to speak to the prophet Huldah. This is the woman that we're talking about, who is the wife of Shalom, son of Tikva, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem in the new quarter. She said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, and tell the man who sent you to me. And then, I'm not going to read all that, but the whole point is, she's in here. Let's see, our fourth is Noadiah, who is found in Nehemiah 6:14. She is actually a false prophetess. So that's an interesting twist, but she was still a prophetess, just a false one, which meant there were non-false prophetesses. Okay, so in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 14, we find that it says, remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah, and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. So again, false prophet trying to intimidate instead of do God's work. Okay, after Noadiah, we have Anna. We find in Luke chapter 2, verses 36 and 38. And we hear about her. They say, there was also a prophet Anna, the daughter of Penuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was very old, and she had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage. And then was a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to whom all were looking forward to redemption of Jerusalem. Okay. So Anna, who worshipped and basically lived in the temple, she was married for 7 years, lived with her husband. When her husband died, she became a widow. She basically lived in the temple, praying and worshiping the rest of her life. What would that even be like? Okay, sorry. I had to ask that question. Okay. Next, we don't know the names of these next four. We just know that they are in there. And they are the four daughters of Philip the evangelist. And they are found in Acts chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. And it says, leaving the next day, we reached Caesarea and stayed at the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. He and his 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. So again, he had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied, in the words of Paul. All right. So in Joel chapter 2, verse 28, in Acts chapter 2, verses 17 and 18, which I will read before I read what he says, Joel says, "And afterward I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days." And then Acts chapter 2, verses 17 and 18 says, "In the last days, God will pour out my spirit." This is literally verbatim, but one is found in Joel, the Old Testament. The other is found in Acts, the New Testament. "In the last days, God said, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy." Sorry, just realized I'm getting 2 separate page things messed up. Okay. So, in those scriptures, in the gospel dispensation, God has poured out his spirit on all people, not just a few prophets or prophetesses, as in the Old Testament period. He would choose specific people to which he would fill with his spirit, and then they would go forward as his prophets. The gift of God's spirit and the ensuing prophetic ministry in the church is now bestowed fully and equally on men as well as women, and women as well as men. If women are not to prophesy, why didn't Paul say so in 1 Corinthians 11? Sorry, at that time my dad didn't believe in conjunctions, so instead of saying why didn't, he wrote why did not, and I missed the not. So why did not Paul say so in 1 Corinthians chapter 11? Obviously, Paul did permit women to pray and prophesy verbally in church, because literally the Bible says so, and he writes about it. So here's the other question. What is prophecy exactly? If you see 1 Corinthians 14, verse 4, it says, "Anyone who speaks in a tongue edifies themselves, but the one who prophesies edifies the church." And then it says in 1 Corinthians 14, verse 4, I'm sorry, that was 14:4. Verse 25, same chapter, it says, "As the secrets of their hearts are laid bare, so they will fall down and worship God, exclaiming, 'God is really among you.'" So, prophecy embodies the elements of Christian teaching and Christian preaching communicated orally to a congregation in a language understood by those who were present. So literally, let me read that again. Prophesying is not necessarily saying this is what is going to happen. What we're saying is prophecy embodies the element of Christian teaching and Christian preaching that is communicated orally or word of mouth to a congregation, a group of people, in a language understood by those present. So, kind of an abrupt ending, but the next one we actually get into is headship, and I would rather do a separate one, even though that video will be short. So, this was part 2. Look for part 3, and we will discuss headship and what that means.